Hello and welcome to Peeling Back the Layers, Citing Sources from Online Materials, Part 1. My name is Diana Elder, and you can reach me at diana@familylocket.com or find more about me on my website, familylocket.com. The content of this video, as well as the thoughts, views, and opinions expressed herein, belong solely to the creator and do not necessarily reflect the views of FamilySearch International and RootsTech. As we talk about source citations today, let's stop for a minute and just think about where source citations fit into our entire genealogy research process. I like to follow a process like the one shown here whenever I do my own research projects or when I do client research projects. And so what I do is I start with an objective, very clear and focused, of what I want to do in that project. And then I do an analysis of everything that's already been found about the subject. Then I search the location to discover new records that could give clues to new sources. I create a research plan, and then as I'm following that plan, I use a research log and I create a source citation for each source that I search that goes right into my research log. And then when I'm ready to write my conclusions, I have a source citation ready to go for my research log, and I can write up an entire report about what I've found for that research objective. So now that you have an idea of what a research process could look like, whether you use that or not, let's talk about why you even need to cite your sources. And here are some of my favorite reasons. You want to be able to evaluate and analyze each one of the sources that you've located. You really want to be able to prove your research findings and your analysis. Of course, you want to find the source again. Nothing's worse than not being able to find where you found that great document. You want to let others find the source as well, and you really want to show that you've done reasonably exhaustive research, which is part of the genealogy proof standard. So citing our sources is one of the things that sets us apart as really good researchers. I like to start off every discussion about citations with this quote from Elizabeth Shown Mills. Citation is an art, not a science. And this is from her book, Evidence Explained, on page 41. And keep that in mind. A lot of people get really hung up with trying to have the perfect citation, but as long as you've got all the elements, as long as it's clear, it's consistent, it's readable, it's understandable, then you've done a good citation. And so we need to get rid of the idea that it has to be perfect and just make sure that it's usable. So what's the difference? Source versus source citation. This is something very valid to think about just to make sure we're clear in our heads. So I'm going to show you an example. A source is easy. We all use sources every day in our genealogy. It can be a book, an article, a microfilm, a photograph, a website. It's anything that gives you information which becomes evidence in proving a conclusion. So here's a source, and notice that it has no citation attached. So if you were to see this piece of paper, you'd have absolutely no idea what this was, where I got it from, who's mentioned in it, unless you read through it and tried to discover that on your own. Now, a source citation identifies a specific location of a source and gives details about that source. So the source citation that goes with the document I just showed you gives a lot of information. Let's see what we can learn. Thomas B. Royston of DeKalb County, Alabama, Cash Entry File 1842, Witness Statement, State Volume Patent Number 5909, Lebanon, Alabama Land Office, Land Entry Papers, Record Group 49, and this is at the records of the Bureau of Land Management at the National Archives. So now you know exactly what that paper was, and you know exactly where to go to find that. Where can you use a source citation? Let's look at several examples about places that I put a source citation from that very same document that I just showed you. First of all, research log. This is where I like to create my source citation, and I like to do this the very first time I search a source. The reason is, in a research log, that is where you are doing your first analysis of a source. And quite honestly, when you are creating a citation, it makes you do deeper analysis of your source. So although it might seem kind of tedious to stop and do a source citation, it's a lot easier to do it then than later when you're trying to upload that source to FamilySearch or to put it into your report, and then you have to stop and create the citation. Now, once you have that in your research log, you can put it lots of other places. You can put it in your personal database, whether you use something like Ancestral Quest, Roots Magic, Family Tree Maker, or Legacy, or another database. You can put it on the FamilySearch family tree when you're creating a new source. Maybe you have an online tree on a different website like Ancestry or MyHeritage, and you want to upload or attach a new source, and you want to have a source citation go with your document. And how about if you're sharing with another researcher any document that you have discovered? Well, you'll want to have a citation to go with it. Otherwise, that researcher may file it away and then pull it out and have no idea where that document came from. And then if you're writing anything, you need to have a source citation backing up every fact that is stated. Now, your written works could include a research report for a specific project. Maybe you're going to take all of your research and put it together in a proof argument. Maybe you're writing a family history to share among family members, or a traditional genealogy, or a book about your family. So here's what my research log looks like. And you can see the arrows pointing to that same citation I just showed you, so that anytime I need to remember exactly where that document came from, there's my citation. And I remember that I ordered that in 2016 from the National Archives. And if I needed to reorder, that is how I would find it. One tip is to create a source citation the very first time you search a source, because it's so much easier to do it right when you're looking at the source, and it helps you become a better genealogist because you have to learn more about the source to actually create the citation. Now, once it's in your research log, then you can copy and paste it everywhere else, into FamilySearch, your database, a research report, or use it to label a document. So here's an example of that same citation that I copied into my personal database in Family Tree Maker. And it's a little bit different image here because that same file has several different documents, but each one of them does get the same citation. And that will tell me again exactly where I found that record and how to get back to that. Now, when I wanted to upload that to a source, as a source in FamilySearch, I could add that as a new source, and then I could give it a title. I gave it the title of 1842 Land Case File for Thomas B. Royston. And then when I had the opportunity to upload it, I could add more information. I could add my own citation. And where did I get the citation from? I got it from my research log. It was all ready to go. If you are going to be sharing your documents or your information with others, then it's a good idea to attach the source citation to the source document as well. And so you can see here at the bottom of the source document on this image is the same citation, so that if I shared this with anyone else, they would know exactly where this came from and they would know what the source document was all about. When I wrote about this in my research report, I also cited this. I discussed this entire file, and then I put the source citation in the footnote. So now that we've learned a lot about some places where you might want to put source citations, let's get to what we're talking specifically in this segment on. And just want to note, this is part one of a three-part series on layered citations. So we're going to specifically talk about layers because, let's face it, in our world of genealogy, we use a lot of online material, and we need to know how to do citations for online material. A layered citation is a term coined by Elizabeth Shown Mills, and it describes digital sources that contain digital images of original records. So we're going to have layers to our citations. We're going to have a physical source citation and we're going to have a digital source citation. And so these will be two separate parts, and we can show that they are separate with the semicolon separating the two sections. Sometimes we might want to have even a third section, especially if we're referencing an original microfilm reproduction of the source. And I'll show you some examples of that. So how do we go about creating a source citation? Well, step number one is simply to understand the source. We need to know what we're citing. It's not enough just to look at a record and to try to write something up really quickly. We need to make sure we thoroughly understand what it is we're trying to create a citation for. So we're going to use the example of the World War I draft registration card for .caris, and this is found on Ancestry.com. And so if you use a lot of Ancestry sources, this will hopefully help you to understand how you can create a good layered citation using an Ancestry source. The principles will be the same for any website that you use, but because we use so many things from Ancestry, I wanted to make sure we had an example for that. In other parts of this series, we will talk about FamilySearch and how to do those sources. So as part of understanding the source, we have to really look through the websites to discover more. And on Ancestry, they have a very simple source citation there at the top, which simply says registration state Oklahoma, registration county Love County. So if you were to see that citation attached to that digital image, or if that was in your research log, that really would not give you very much information, would it? It doesn't have any reference whatsoever about the person or the date, so many things that are left out of that. Now, what about source information? Does that give us enough detail, enough information? Well, we learned that it came from Ancestry's collection called U.S. World War I Draft Registration Cards, 1917 to 1918. And we get a little bit of an idea of where Ancestry is located and the year that this collection was created. And then we do get some original data that this came from the National Archives, and it's part of the United States Selective Service System. And we also see that it's imaged from Family History Library microfilm. Well, there is a boatload of information there. But I still haven't seen anything in that card or in that information about the specifics about who this person was that had this draft registration card or anything about him. And so you can see that although each one of those pieces gives us a little bit of information we could use for a citation, none of that is appropriate for a complete citation. So we are going to have to do some work ourselves in figuring out how to create a source citation. And we've got a physical layer, we've got a microfilm layer, and then we have a digital layer. So we are going to need to do a little bit more work to create our own citation. So step 2 of creating the citation involves answering 5 questions. And before we look at that, I just want to show you what the citation that I created for this record looks like. Now that we've talked about what was on the page in Ancestry, we can see how I have used some of that information. I started with the collection title, U.S. World War I Draft Registration Cards 1917 to 1918. And then it was from the state of Oklahoma. Then Love County, it was draft card H and an entry for .caris 1917. It's a database with images, and it's found at Ancestry, and there's the date of access. And then I'm also citing the National Archives microfilm publication. So what do you think? Did I do a good job in getting some of that information from the Ancestry website into a citation that I could now put in my research log and that could go with that document into a research report or to share with someone else? I think so. But first, before we decide on that, let's just go through some of the parts. It's all well and good to talk about creating source citations, but how do you actually do it? After step 1, really understanding it, then you're ready to create your own citation by answering 5 questions. The who, what, where is, when, and wherein. These questions were defined in Genealogy Standards, which was published by the Board for Certification of Genealogists, and also discussed in thorough detail in Mastering Genealogical Documentation by Tom Jones. And when we are talking about layered citations, we want to think about answering those questions for both the digital and the physical layers. So please join me for part 2 of this series, where we will go through the World War I draft registration for Dot Karas and discuss how I created that layered citation using these 5 questions. Please visit my website, FamilyLocket.com, and our special RootsTech page, FamilyLocket.com/RootsTech, to get all sorts of templates and to learn more about our podcast, our newsletter, our book, and our courses. I want to help everyone become a better researcher, and I love educating and helping others. So please take a look and see what else we have to offer. I invite you to watch other great videos on RootsTech Connect. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you in part 2 of this series.